good day, good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned.
Maybe your stupid opinions aren't right. And are you so sure your life is going so much the way you want it to go, and you're such a bloody paragon of virtue, and the light is shining out every orifice, and everyone who disabuses you of your notions is evil?
Hey yo, what's up? This is MCM and you're listening to Bob. You're probably right. You're probably right. You're probably right. Now, I'm going to take a different turn with this one. I'm going to give you some intel, some information that you may be not sure of. So, yeah. All right, ready to go? Okay, check us out. Hello and welcome back to You're Probably Right. I'm your host, MCM. Today, we're diving into a real intriguing aspect of digital content world. Well, sort of. A question that I've been pondering and many people have asked me. Well, maybe not many people, but a few people. I just thought it was a good question to answer. And I know many of you have too, right? Why do our impressions on platforms like Spotify, Apple, and others go up even when we haven't posted new content in a while and our plays aren't increasing? Let's break it down. Now, I think many times people who would consider themselves a conspiracy theorist or whatever, or maybe just thirsty for hits and plays, impressions, and you're wondering, do you tease the providers a little bit by just holding off, or are you hurting your own action on your content by not posting regularly? Most people would suggest that you should probably post, say as your podcast, once or twice a week. You should probably let your listeners know what day and what time to expect your content. Or if you don't want to do that, just be regular. So that might take a while, especially if you're not promoting the days and the times that you're going to be on. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you have a job and, you can't just say, I'm going to be here at this time every day. Maybe you commute. I don't know your situation. But I do know if you decide to be available for your listeners, and that's another thing, you have to know who your listeners are. If your listeners are young and between the ages of, say, 17 to 31, 32, you might want to have a podcast that starts around 3:30, 4 o'clock live to be there for your listeners who will be able to get home in time to pick it up, especially if you're someone who does lives. But I mean, otherwise you could just pick your time, and probably with a little research, maybe a little monkey see, monkey do. Maybe there's someone who is really famous who your type of podcast or whatever it is you have is sort of modeled after. You might not want to do their exact time. So if you are a podcast like a Shannon Sharpe, for instance, and you do a nightcap, you might not want to start your nightcap exactly the same time as Shannon. You might want to start an hour early to get yours in, or you might want to do it after. Maybe yours is the nightcap cap, or maybe you're going to do tea in the afternoon with, you know what I mean? You definitely don't want to pod maybe when the big guns are out, or maybe you do have a set of listeners that don't listen to those podcasts that you listen to. Maybe you have a different interest level. So maybe, let's just say it was music and you listen to Bach and you listen to Beethoven or Handel or whatever it is, but the music that you're producing is hip hop, you probably wouldn't have to worry about it. But if you're trying to get big, or maybe you're semi big already, you might not want to compete with the big ones, the big guns. You know what I mean? If that is your competition, because sometimes you just have to start. Sometimes those big guns that are talking about the same stuff that you're talking about aren't even your competition in the first place. Some of your individuals that listen to your podcast or whatever it is you have may not even be onto the stuff that you're onto, even though you're talking about the same content. As well as, if you're trying to piggyback off somebody else's type of content, you might want to watch theirs first, and maybe you want to remix what they've done and present it again in your own way. It still shines through as new content. I mean, nowadays, everybody's content is somebody else's content. If you were privy to what happened when Cat Williams went on to Shannon Sharp's podcast, then you'll know that within 13 days, they had 50 million views. And you can't even just say 50 million views, because it was a 2.5 hour podcast, I believe. And they got their guys to chop it up to maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes bits. So then those got millions, because a lot of people didn't want to, nor did they have the patience or the attention span to listen to the whole podcast each time. Maybe they just wanted to get a certain point. Maybe they are a podcast themselves and they just wanted to talk about that one thing. So they just needed to see where he was talking about it instead of having to rifle through the whole podcast, if you understand. So I'm assuming if you are a person, a content creator, then you probably are understanding the road that I'm going down. So beyond that, I have about 5 different reasons why your impressions might have gone up when you're not even posting, and possibly at the same time your plays, your streams, or whatever you want to call them, have not gone up at the same time, or maybe they have, but these could be the reasons. And I know this is a different topic that I'm not usually on, but at the same time, I'm on topics that affect people. So you may want to check out some of my other podcasts while you're looking at this, or after, I should say, after you're listening to this one. I'm not looking at anything because I still haven't decided whether or not I really want to be on camera. I kind of like the idea of the intimacy of having just a one-on-one with my listener. I have, sorry, I'm like clearing my throat. You get a bubble in your throat, your voice totally changes. Yeah, that's where I'm right now. Hold on. All right, let me get some of this. There we go. I'm back. I'm back, baby. All right. And remember, this podcast has nothing to do with church. This has nothing to do with Christianity. This has nothing to do with being a believer. But at the same time, understand that this podcast is not a Christian podcast, but it is a podcast by a Christian. So generally, my views will be ones that a Bible-believing Christian could and would subscribe to in most cases. Of course, I'm not perfect. A lot of the time I go off, most of the time I go off the cuff. So I might say something that maybe if somebody was here to help me do the podcast, they might have pulled me up and said, well, maybe this, that, or the other. But sometimes it's just me. Well, most of it, it's just me. So I haven't always had the time to stop and question myself over something that I just said, because I'm thinking about talking about the next thing, if you understand. So therefore, I don't have somebody to go back and forth off to make sure that everything is in sync with the scriptures say. And that's why if you catch me on something that's not 100% correct, well, you know what? You're probably right, because you had a chance to think about it. You had a chance to pause the podcast. You had a chance to go back to the scriptures to see what it really said. So understand that I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to lead anybody down the garden path or any other path. I just want to do the best podcast that I can possibly do. And I, at the same time, hope that my podcasts will be relevant years after I'm done and possibly years after I'm here. But nowadays, because things change so often, including the platforms themselves, if I'm assuming if my stuff's not kept up by somebody, even like one of my kids or whatever it is, years in the future, then it'll probably just fade into oblivion. Chances are. But that's just my opinion. All right. So the first reason I think, let's talk algorithms. These mysterious beasts of the digital realm have more power than we sometimes realize. They're constantly at work, recommending content to users based on their interests. So even if you haven't posted lately, your past content might be getting a nudge into someone's recommendations. So I hope you're getting that. Right? So you might have posted something a long time ago, but for whatever reasons, the way the algorithm little beasties work is that for whatever reason, maybe that thing that you talked about 4 years ago has become a big topic. You know, if you're clear on your information, if you're right about your information, you never know when what you've done in the past might creep back up and actually be relevant again. It could be relevant this year and it could be relevant 10, 15 years down. You just don't know. And it could go viral. I mean, the chances of us all going viral are next to nothing, those chances. But some of us, for sure, some of us will be hiding under a rock. Our whole catalog of 200, 150, 20 podcast might just be hiding somewhere, and maybe you've been thinking about deleting it, but little did you know, hopefully you're not going to be one of those people who delete your content a year too soon. You know what I mean? The algorithms may one day be friendly. I know it's possible right now because you're listening to this. You're thinking that the algorithm hamsters in their basement somewhere churning around have been like killing everything you've been trying to do and not helping it. But you never know, when it comes around, you might be put in the books. When they open the books, your name may be put in. A little reference from Goodfellas. Anyhow, moving right along. Next, search trends. Picture this. Something you talked about months ago suddenly becomes a hot topic. People start searching for it, and boom, there's your podcast popping up in search results, gathering those precious impressions. It could happen. I mean, here's a joke for you. I've been thinking about putting my podcast on camera, and I was going through my YouTube channel, and hold on, sorry, I have to turn this thing down. This guy's talking in my ear. Hold on. I got the unpaid version of Spotify going off in my ear here, so unfortunately, it's confusing the heck out of what I'm saying. All right, that's better. So, I was thinking about posting one of my videos on Spotify just to see, because I was looking at it. I mean, now, yeah, I probably had the face for radio, but maybe the voice for TV and radio. So I'm more comfortable being on just audio only. But that podcast, I was listening to a podcast that I did about the times of COVID-19 and the effects of this, that, and the other. And I had about 8 or 9 great topics that I was just kind of hitting, talking about them and moving on. And I was like, this stuff's good. And realizing how right I was about a lot of things, I'm like, man, maybe I should just post this as some visual, but then I'm thinking, the real listeners, the most people who listen to podcasts do not need a visual. Now, there may be those who are trying to, be, YouTube adjacent with their Spotify experience. I just think that my podcast really isn't for those people, so I don't mind. But I was really, really tempted to, matter of fact, download it off YouTube, because I don't have a personal copy of that. Most of my stuff I don't. I just kind of leave it out there. Now, if we're talking about my movies that I've bought over the years, I have my physical copies. Do you? That's a whole nother topic. But put it this way, I probably still own over 400 DVDs and Blu-rays that if if we don't have Netflix anymore, if cable or whatever it isn't working, or even internet, I could technically host a year of movies. Every day a different movie. That's how many movies I have and more, which I think is kind of cool. I like the idea of having a library. You know, everybody has their favorites and their lists on Netflix for as long, or whatever it is that you use, Amazon Prime or whatever it is, stuff that you've watched and you're probably not going to watch it again, or maybe you'll watch it with somebody who hasn't seen it. But do you collect? Not really, right? Or if you're a movie or music buff or audiophile, you have your collection. Whereas the average person who probably loves music, dance to music, this, that, and the other, chills out to music, does everything to music. But there's a lot of people nowadays who don't own a collection at all. I'm one of those people who have a collection, and I could just go, hey, here it is. Oh, Netflix took it off a year and a half ago, and it's never going to go back because this guy was wearing the wrong color, this or that, or whatever the case is, or he said this or that, so he's been canceled. We're never going to see R. Kelly's music again, or whatever it is. But you got me. Basically, what I'm saying is, I got my stuff, and I'm really saying that a lot of people, instead of giving your stuff away, selling your stuff off, you know, think about keeping your originals, your copies. You know, and it goes back to things like telephone numbers. Many of us probably know 5 telephone numbers tops. Many of us don't know anybody. Some of you have kids, or some of you are, you know, you have, well, hopefully a lot of you have parents, but if you don't, you know, no harm, no foul. I'm just trying to say something here. I just realized I could have offended somebody big time. But the point is, even with the kids situation, what I'm saying is a lot of us just don't have people's numbers anymore. And sometimes there's people who are really, really, really close to you. Maybe your significant other. And you just know, you put them on speed dial or whatever it is. You just click them off of your phone, and you click on that name, and lo and behold, a couple rings and they answer. But if somebody had to give you their phone to call your loved ones, how many of you have a telephone book? How many of you have written down the 5 most important people in your lives number somewhere on a piece of paper somewhere? You know what I mean? So anyway, something to think about with trends, okay? Now, let's not forget about playlists. And this is a real cool thing when it comes to podcasts and such. A playlist collection. Maybe a dedicated listener has added you to one of their episodes to their killer playlist, and it catches other listeners' eyes, or ears, rather. You got it? So that could happen as well, whereas you have a dedicated listener, and for whatever reason, Spotify, Amazon, what's the other one? Whatever. Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Podbean, whoever. They've decided that they like this person's playlist. For whatever reason, maybe they have just collected the right amount of whatever it is on their playlist, and for whatever reason, a provider has decided, you know what, we like this person's style, so we're going to start pushing stuff off of this person's playlist, where, you know, you just be blessed that somebody decided to share your stuff, which is kind of cool, because they put it on a playlist and now people are consuming it. You have no idea. Maybe you haven't even checked your plays in a year or 5 months or 3 years, and all of a sudden you find out that, whoa, I became a success and I had no idea. Kind of cool again, right? Moving on, we've got social sharing and external references. It's like digital world word of mouth. Someone tweets about your podcast or mentions it on a blog, triggering a chain reaction of curiosity, consequently more impressions, and if you're really, really lucky or blessed, maybe you'll get some more streams, some more plays, more views, more watches, more likes, more subs or follows. You know, there's so many of all these different criteria of things that you could get that might increase the consumption of whatever it is you are providing to the masses that you didn't even know existed. For you, anyways. We know that the masses are out there. They say there's about 8 billion of us at this time that I'm doing this podcast. So there's a lot of people out there. And remember, chances are something that you've thought about doing or something that you're doing, chances are there's probably at least 50 other people, if not 200 people, even if it's a really keen individual idea. There's still, I guarantee you, at least 10 people who've thought of it. At least, even if it's really, 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 really rare of a thought. Okay. Let's see. What else do we got? Maybe, let's see. User behavior plays or role too. Sometimes listeners are just browsing, checking out what's available. That might not hit play, but they still contribute to your impressions. So for whatever reason, a person could just be looking at chicken noodle soup. And maybe for whatever reason, you had a podcast on chicken noodle soup. Now maybe your chicken noodle soup was the dance, that hip hop dance that they had years back. But somebody else was, thinking about making a podcast, or maybe other people did think about making a podcast on how to make the best chicken noodle soup. Or maybe it was Chicken Noodle Soup, the book. And for whatever reason, yours got thrown in the mix, having nothing to do with the other chicken noodle soups. But because you had the right wording, you had the right name of your podcast, you had the right information or whatever you said, and for some reason your stuff's trending, and there you go. So you never know what could happen, right? Also, there is, well, let's not overlook the platform changes. Maybe Spotify or Apple tweak something and suddenly your content is getting more limelight than usual. It's like finding an unexpected spotlight on a stage you thought was dim, right? And I know that goes both ways as well. So you never know. Yeah, platform change, like, previously Spotify had Anchor, and then Anchor changed to Anchor by Spotify. Then it became Podcast by Spotify, and they just threw all of the Anchor people over to the Spotify podcasters app. And you never know when they do changes like that, or maybe Apple by Spotify or something crazy like that happens, and somehow you end up, when the shuffle happens, you end up at the front of the list for whatever reason. Maybe your artwork is amazing. Maybe your titles are amazing. Maybe just the thumbnails are just so inviting. Whatever it is, something that you've done one way or the other is intriguing. And that's why sometimes it really does pay off to spend that little extra time creating your thumbnail, really, really thinking about that title that you're going to use. Instead of saying all you need to know about steel, maybe it might be all you need to know about having steel in Pittsburgh, or whatever. Just, you never know. You just really don't know. There's also seasonal and periodic interest. Depending on your podcast theme, you might see spikes in interest during certain times of year. It's like surfing. Sometimes you just catch a wave and you ride it, is the best way I can say. I mean, if your podcast is called Santa's Playhouse or Elf's Time to Chill or something like that, people might look up Santa or elves right around Christmas, and you're wondering, I wonder what happens in the winter around December. Why all of a sudden people care about my podcast? Well, maybe it's the way that you named it, and maybe that's why in the middle of July people don't care about your podcast. Who knows? But the whole point is that there can be all types of reasons. So there you have it, folks. The digital content world is complex, a complex web of interactions and algorithms. It's not just about what you post, but also it's about how the world around you interacts with what you have already put out there. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is really think about fine-tuning your list. Maybe there's stuff that you really don't want people to see. You know, we've all seen somebody has a career. It's an amazing career. They left some stuff hanging out there that could be skewed this way or that way. Maybe they were trying to be a little controversial. And the next thing you know, whatever it is that they're talking about in their podcast 15, 17 years ago is all of a sudden the worst thing that they could have possibly been talking about. Or what they had said back 15, 17 years ago was something that was absolutely ridiculous, and you couldn't be dumber for actually having it on your podcast and yammering on about it for 3 hours, to all of a sudden things changed in the social atmosphere, and now what you are saying is like gold. You just don't know the way it's going to go. But I will say this. Stuff that you're not maybe too proud of that's out there about you, maybe stuff that you've said, maybe a picture that you've posted, a look you had, or whatever it is, and you're really not that comfortable with it. If you're really not that comfortable, regardless of if it gives you a bunch of likes, follows, subs, streams, impressions, and you're just not comfortable, just think. Maybe the 14 people that listened to your podcast over the last 3 years really liked it, but just understand something. There is a chance that it might pick up. The question you have to answer yourself for everything that you've put out on social media or as content you've created, maybe there was a cry for help. Maybe there was a cry for, look at me, pick me. But just make sure that you're prepared to be famous for whatever it is you put out there. And I know a lot of people are possibly cringing right now, thinking about something that they've never been totally comfortable with that they put out there. So just think about that, okay? All right. Guys and girls, thanks for tuning in. You're probably right. This is You're Probably Right. And I'm your host, MCM. And remember, in the ever-evolving world of podcast and digital content, staying curious and informed is your best bet. Until next time, keep questioning everything, but settle for something. And I would say the best thing to settle for would be the Lord God Almighty, Jesus, who died on the cross for your sins. If God has given you the faith to believe, find a good church, read your Bible, learn to be an example to others, and learn about what you say you believe. And if you believe it, live it, because there's nothing worse than somebody who says something, but they don't live it at all. You know what I mean? So until next time, as I said, keep questioning, keep exploring, and you're probably right. Well, hopefully you'll be probably right. Anyhow, that's about it, guys. This is a short one this week. Just want to keep it out there. Take care. Peace out. Hey, come check out You Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 dogs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.